Greetings, all praise the King. Welcome to Eyewitness, where we reason to discover truth. Today we're speaking about secret. The scripture teaches us in chapter 17 about the mystery Babylon, the queen mother of harlots, abomination of the earth. Secret is another word for mystery. What is mysterious? What is the way they function, the way they operate, they carry their business. People often try to interpret because they know by doing so they'll gain an advantage for themselves. So you remember the book, how does this work? How does everything work? Of course, on the internet, you search, how does this work? You'll get all kinds of responses. So people are interested in how it works. And that is exactly what is concealed. Yeah, they'll give you a response. When you go look something up about computers, for example, how to hack. Well, you're not going to be able to go to Wikipedia and get the answer. You're going to waste your time. They're going to use their language against you. You'll never figure out how to do it because they don't want you to know. It's a form of trickery because you have to make people believe that the answer's out there and it's attainable, but without providing the answer. And this is essential because of the way that they carry about their affairs. When you have a company and you make some kind of product, you'd like to keep your ingredients secret so that other competitors don't come and make the same product. Sounds reasonable. However, there's a patenting system where these companies can sue for infringement. So it's not like Pepsi doesn't know what Coca-Cola's ingredient, their secret sauce. They make pretend that they got it sealed up in some vault somewhere and whatnot. But really, they don't really want to let people know. What they drink it will clean your toilet. So they keep the ingredients in it. How the police work. They protect certain people to make money on the street, to get information about other people, and they continue to incarcerate the youth in mass numbers because they've got one person on the street selling them out. That has to be a secret. Is it acceptable? Well, it's acceptable in their eyes. See, they're going to sell it to each other by saying, hey, we're getting more arrests, we're taking down more drug dealers. And meanwhile, the biggest drug dealers still are being protected. So it's permissible within their rule of law. That's perhaps most important is that this right here has to be secret. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but the way that things are, if you don't keep the system, hidden and unknown to the common person, you ain't gonna make them serve you. So, whenever you get into a situation, they say, go get a lawyer. Go get a lawyer. Because the lawyer is the expert that knows, supposedly, this. And so, logic tells you it will save you time, by hiring somebody to do the job. However, they won't even let you in the door most of the time if you don't have the expert. And why is that? Well, that's because they don't want the common person to really know. Talking to a lawyer the other day, and he was saying something like, yeah, it's corrupt, but that's how it is, in so many words. Of course, they don't use that kind of language, but that's what they're saying. They know the system is crooked. They know it allows for the worst criminals to get away, or to not even be ever prosecuted, and it continues to find the people on the bottom that will keep that cycle, because there's a workforce behind it. It's an industry. They've managed to link up with companies, a lot of times their own, and profit from the work effort of incarcerated people. And so once they begin this process, see, it's not easy for them to stop. It's like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's harder to stop when it's rolling down the hill. I mean, you hear people talk about the Constitution. You hear people talk about the Constitution, and they always, here, there's a Constitution of the USA. There's constitutions of every nation. Even each state, which is its own nation itself, has a constitution, and that's how you know it's its own nation in itself. But when you hear people talk about this, we need to follow the Constitution. The first thing that people might think to ask is, what is that? Could you explain that to us? And they might have some of it, but most of them won't be able to recite the Bill of Rights. And then you have to think, well, are we really being governed underneath the USA? And the answer is no. The USA sells itself by saying those are protections, the Bill of Rights, and they have their own little thing going on. But each state has its own constitution that's really governing over the people. When the police come, they usually coming on behalf of the state. Sometimes the feds. Those are for the people that are more fortunate. Most of the people, I think 85-90% of the people that are incarcerated under the state systems. So states function as their own nation. They have their own constitution. If people start talking about you need to follow the Constitution, ask them which one. They'll be like, the USA. But wait a minute. Where do you live? You live in Wyoming? Well, Wyoming, they got their own thing going on. Do you know what it is? No. So, questions go a long way for people that just like to run their mouth. And usually they do it because they know it will provide some kind of more security for them from the surrounding environment. People looking to fit in, They want others to approve of them and to give them a job. You know, if people really knew what it was, if any one person could ever figure this thing out, they call it common law. But it seems uncommon because people don't know it. You know, the scripture teaches us what there is for us to know. You know, the law comes in Exodus and it prevails throughout the scripture. This, you know, may require some interpretation, yet most of it is clear. You know, the basis of it, the foundation, what they call the bedrock of their democracy, well, our bedrock is very concise. And it's subject to little interpretation. Whereas their thing is designed to be interpreted any number of ways. For example, when you say you're going to give somebody a right to a speedy trial, well, what is that? Like, how much time is that? How is that defined? When you say you're not going to inflict cruel and unusual punishment, well, what defines cruel and unusual? So, you see, they continue to interpret these things. When you have this system now, you have, you know, an international rule. And they start making it up as they go. Talking about, you know, you're a prisoner of war, you don't have these kinds of rights. The person's still underneath the jurisdiction of their rule, but yet they're not granted rights because they say they're not a citizen. So that's how they're getting people to buy in, because they want to make pretend that by being this thing they call citizen, it's giving them some kind of protections. It's giving them some kind of protections. They you know, make pretend that they have something good going because they're going to let people be able to speak. You know, these kinds of figureheads continue to point at other nations and say that the people over there are not able to speak. This is not true. And there's no real example to prove this. But that's what they've been able to sell. So they call this thing democracy. And we've talked plenty about this. It's also called capitalism. Again, sometimes these terms are vague. They can be interpreted in any number of ways. Democracy is supposed to be majority rule. When you've got people that live in other nations, other lands, that own companies, that buy out elections, there's no majority. Even if it was majority, it's forming rule. And so on and so forth. So we know the system is not, you know, formed by the people, or what people, you know what I mean? Not formed by the majority. Yeah, everything is supposed to be so complex that nobody can really figure it out. That's the idea. Then they bring in their experts to tell people, oh, this is what you need to see. You know, there's a scientist. He's saying this. You know, we got a doctor, a professor, and whatever. You know, those are the titles. Who gives these titles to people? They told them, oh, they got some good grades, you know. They graduated from some such and such school. It's been around. And so, you know, they acquire these titles, and then the rest of the people are supposed to listen to what they got to say. That's a secret society. Tower of Babel was supposed to give people godly powers, because they thought that the higher you were, the more godlike you become. So by building this tower as high as they could build it, they fooled people into thinking that they had become the gods for people to serve. Had that not been a secret, do you think it would have worked?